Welcome to the CoCovidVid show. My name is Cody. I am your host. This week, I am joined by Jessica Watson. She has worked as a figure skating coach for over 10 years, has been doing life coaching under Turn Yourself Up for 5 years, and currently she teaches at the Manitoba Institute of Trades and Technology, teaching technical writing to software developers. Jessica, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting times. I think, yeah. I want to talk a little bit about your figure skating first. Let's get into that. That sounds interesting to me because you teach you tell me a little bit about your figure skating and your team and how long you've been doing it and all that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I started skating when I was a little kid and loved it, and just that was always going to be part of my life. I was never going to quit, and so I also found synchronized figure skating, which is a team sport in skating. So it's 8 to 16 skaters on the ice out at once. So it's kind of like a dance team kind of thing.
Okay.
And then you make, like, the goal is to move as one and sort of make these intricate shapes and movements on the ice.
Right.
Started out in grade 7.
Imagine it's like synchronized swimming, right? But like
the water is
on ice, but it's the water's frozen.
Yeah, exactly.
and then the swimmers on top of the ice, not stuck frozen in the ice.
Yes, with blades on their feet, and so it's very beautiful. It's very technical. It takes a lot of work to get 16 people to be able to move on their skates as one.
Right.
So
yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing that since I was started in grade 7. So I think I've been doing synchro for 20 years.
Wow.
Started coaching when I was 20. And the last 5 years I've been working with the team at the U of M, and then teams out in Hazel Ridge, which is just east of Oakbank.
Okay. So how long have you been coaching this team in particular?
Yeah, so for the Hazel Ridge Highlights, that's the teams out there, and we've got 2 youth teams and typically 2 adult teams. It looks different this year, of course, with COVID restrictions and all that. But I've been with them for 5 years, and so it's been kind of special. The group I had when I started there, they were 10 to 14. Now some of them have graduated. And some of them are in high school, but I still have that same group of kids that have kind of grown up with it. So yeah, it's kind of cool. It's kind of a special sport because it's not very big in Manitoba. Like, there's not really many places that you can go to do this. But so it's kind of like a tight-knit family, I guess.
Yeah. I imagine there's a lot of community, a lot of camaraderie among the team, and this is something you're continuing to do it now with the COVID restrictions and amidst the pandemic. Is that something that's happening? Because I imagine you trying to teach or do coaching over Zoom, and hilarity ensues in my head because like synchronized figure skating. Zoom is not known for synchronized anything very well.
Right.
And they're very public about their downfall as a poor figure skating platform.
Right. Yeah. Yes, very public about that.
Yeah, everybody knows that. Zoom figure skating, whoa, wouldn't try that.
Yeah. No, skating looks a lot different this year. Our season typically goes from September to end of March. So when COVID got to Canada and we realized it was a thing, that was like mid-March, and we were preparing for a competition at the end of the weekend, and then the competition Saturday, it got canceled the day before, so skating just ended abruptly. All of a sudden it was like the rink was closed, we're done, which was kind of weird. Like we didn't have our AGM and our wrap ups and all that. It was just like done, over. And then in the fall, we started back for a couple of weeks. I think we got about 6 weeks maybe. And then at Halloween, everything was going to Code Red in Winnipeg and surrounding area, and then rink is closed. So
how do you keep at it then? How do you keep a synchro figure skating team?
yeah, a lot of what we do is individual technical skills. And that's mostly what we've been doing this year. We were going to put it together a simple program, but normally in synchro, you hold on to each other, and like that's part of the thing. Like you can kind of,
Right.
that's part of the physics of it.
Yeah.
But we couldn't touch. So right now on Zoom, like I'm teaching like body awareness and strength and trying to have really nice positions and all of that. But we're definitely missing that feel of like working together for something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It just seems like a incredible challenge to try to connect as a team, and then I guess you can try to still keep that culture within the
Well,
team going. And
that's exactly it. I think we didn't want to stop completely, because then it just, people move on in their lives, and those skaters that are in grade 11, grade 12, they might not come back to skating, because it's just like, okay, well, what's next? And what's possible right now, and all of that. But it is really interesting moving to an online platform, because all of a sudden, I have to think about what I'm teaching
Mhm.
a little bit differently, like how I'm explaining things, and even like a lesson plan and all of that, because, after 10 years on the ice, like it's pretty easy to just show up and keep it moving and not
Sure.
have to prepare a lot of the lesson plans. But
Right.
yeah, so it's been interesting because we get to see each other in a different way. Um, I usually try to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak, either at the
Hmm.
beginning or the end as well. Um, but some of the skaters don't have very good internet, so they're just a blurry image, or
Right.
they have to turn their video off because it just doesn't work for them otherwise.
Yeah.
Um, mhm.
Yeah. No, that seems. I'm imagining it like everybody needs to be responsible for getting their own rink. Everybody's just gonna have a rink. Or if one person shows up with a rink one day and be like, "Wait, nobody else brought a rink? I'm the only one that booked out a rink for this." I
That
thought
like made it in their
made in
backyard
their
or
backyard.
front yard. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. You talk a bit about lesson plans, or having to think about that more and having to be more conscious or more intentional about that, and because it's just something coaching figure skating has been something obviously that's been part of your life for a long time now, and it's probably been very natural to you. uh,
Mhm.
your experience teaching at MITT, at the Manitoba Institute of Trades and Technology, that's pretty new, right? Like that's a new experience to you, and that's one that's been purely digital. Like it started digital,
Yeah.
it's been online the entire time. Could you speak a little bit about that and what that situation looks like right now, or what?
Yeah, so that's new for me. I started teaching as a post-secondary instructor there this fall, so end of September, beginning of October. Um, and I had an interview for the position completely on Zoom, and then I think that was like mid-August, and then I got the position, and then started working on the course material. And then at one point too, I was like, I don't even know if I would recognize the people I had the interview with, right? Like I haven't like seen them since. If I were to see them in person, I'm not sure if I would, but I did anyways.
Yeah, have you actually been physically at the school at all at
I
any point?
went I went once or twice to pick up like my ID badge and card, and they had a laptop for me. And then I did go in one day to you like teach from there just to see if it was a better experience. Because
Well, like
I
you still did
am,
it remotely, but you did it while you were.
yeah, like the students are all remote, and there's no plan to have them in person anytime soon, right? Like it's pretty
Mm,
much like when we're back to normal, then the students can be in person again. So I'm teaching over Microsoft Teams,
okay.
which was new to me. Um, there's some nice things about it because it integrates into, like, they use Teams like Slack, like chat
Right.
and all of that. So I can just go to the class chat and like click start video, and it starts the team meeting with everyone, and then it also saves and uploads to Microsoft Stream at the end.
Okay. So
It's
that
really
the
handy.
other like the students can watch it afterwards and review
Yeah,
things.
exactly. And um but there's also some weird features about it. Like I can't, like with Zoom, you can, put it on grid view and see everyone that's there, and even if there's another page you can move to it. Stream is just like random, like you can't
Hmm.
see everyone. It's just sort of random, whoever shows up in front of you,
Right.
um, which is odd to me. And then it doesn't have the breakout room feature, which
Hmm.
I
That
I'm going
seems
to use
like,
for my next class. Yeah.
yeah, that seems like that would be almost pretty critical for like in a education setting to have that
Yeah.
ability to have your students go into separate breakout rooms or to have conversations
Yeah.
amongst themselves, because that's one thing that Zoom and online and all this online conferencing technology is, it just seems like is a big barrier to me. It's just really, it's designed so that one person is talking, and
Hmm.
it's designed so that everybody is paying attention to one person. So we're taking these collaborative experiences like a classroom, like figure skating or whatever, and we're trying to make it so it's like purely one person can talk at a time. There's like 20 people in a room, and nobody's allowed to talk except for one person at a time, and it's just hard to keep track of. How do you replicate, how do you recreate that physical space in a digital world? How
Hmm.
do you do that? It just, yeah, it's a weird barrier that we have to try to figure out now.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing, so I actually am only teaching on Fridays, and then throughout the week they have other classes. But it's actually mostly the same class from Monday to Thursday. They're working on their software and coding and learning about that and whatever projects they have. And then I have them on Fridays for, I would say, like more soft skill type classes, like the technical writing, and we're going to be doing presentation communications next.
Okay.
But I'm sort of aware of, like, these students aren't getting the same experience of getting to know each other if as they would in class when they're in there together, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of worked that into part of my class. Is like every day, every morning, we have like a stand up, and there's 25 students in the class, so we'll get through about half of them, but they'll each get a chance to speak on either something they learned or something they wanted to share, or whatever they wanted to say that
Mm-hmm.
day. So I've been finding like that's been really good for getting to know people and getting familiar, and then they're also getting used to speaking in that space as well.
Right.
So some students are really comfortable and they'll just go off mute and be like, Jessica, I've got a question, and ask right then and there, which is great. Some students prefer to put in the chat, some are more quiet. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but it,
Imagine
yeah.
it's easy. It's even easier for the quiet student to be completely invisible and never really.
Yeah, like I do have I print a list of student names, and then I try to check them off. And then sometimes when I'm just wanting people to answer different things, I'll try to look on the list and think about who I haven't heard from in a while, and ask that. But yeah, it's got to be totally. a different experience for them. So that's something I've been really cognizant about, is how to help them get to know each other and help them feel comfortable as a group.
Mm. What kind of backgrounds do these students have in technology or educational backgrounds in general? And are they
Yeah, it's a 1-year program, software development, and some are straight out of high school and some have, careers already, maybe in tech, maybe not. So some come in with a bit of programming knowledge already. It is it is a very rigorous program. Like,
hmm,
they're in there all day, Monday to Friday, and there's typically they're working on homework and stuff into the evening. So I think it's been quite a shock for those students who just came out of grade 12,
hmm,
who maybe didn't even have much to do in the last couple months because of COVID.
right,
And now all of a sudden they have this like rigorous program that they have to keep up with. And
right,
basically, as you're doing more courses as it goes on, but it's sort of like one or two courses at a time. But if you fail one, you're academically suspended. Like, you need every course. Um,
wow.
so there's been a couple students that I think more out of high school, and just not having that work ethic.
It's
That
yeah,
Yeah.
that's tricky because again, I feel like I had this discussion with my wife the other day of just in high school and the public education system in general, your hands held quite a bit, really. Like the system is there for
Yeah.
you to stay in it as long as you can, and and to shepherd you through the grades and to get graduated and to get the basic education you need. Once you get post secondary, it's like a big part of it is you have to organize yourself. You have to
Mhm.
you're learning how to learn, you're learning how to work the system, you're learning how to organize your own work. So yeah, I can imagine, especially doing purely online classes.
Yeah, you're just at home, right? Like,
Right,
so all of a sudden you're supposed to have all these, time management, work management skills,
right,
but you're doing this out of your bedroom.
right. Yeah,
So,
and it's not something that usually gets covered in high school. Like time management isn't. It should be. Isn't something that's covered in high school.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah.
What we use that and kind of transition a little bit into. I want to talk about your life coaching experience a little bit and
Yeah.
what that's kind of been like since the pandemic. And so you've been doing it for about 5 years now.
Yeah, I started coaching about 5 years ago. It's been sort of done in seasons for me.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'm doing it more than other times, or sometimes it's more about my own personal development and
Sure.
learning about psychology and self development and mindfulness and all of that. Um, so yeah, sorry, where did you want to start with this?
Sure. Where did I want to start with that? Have you has there been yeah, I mean, I guess I asked you before if you could speak to life coaching that much, but yeah, during the pandemic, have
Yeah.
you has the COVID-19 situation, has the pandemic situation been a topic for uh, your life coaching? Like, has that been a theme with the people you're working with, or has that been a additional challenge that's kind of new? I don't know where I'm going with this. This is terrible.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So to be honest, like, I'm not working with anyone right now. Like,
Okay.
um what happened with me, so background and why I'm working with software developers. Like, I took software development in university, worked for a few years, decided that I enjoyed soft skill things and team building and, things that I had learned in skating, more, found this life coaching, sort of transition to that. 2016, I decided to quit my job and go out and have my own life coaching business.
Mm-hmm.
And so 2016, that year was great. I was coaching some clients. I came up with like a boot camp to take you from like an idea to like making a dream into reality, basically. Like how do you work towards that? How do you get support? All of that. And then September 2017, my mom died, and that sort of threw everything that I was doing business-wise up in the air, because it really, really affected me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of stopped doing things. And then it's been my journey in the last like 3 years. Like the first year was like a big fog. So this is grief, right? And so many people actually now with COVID and how that's, changed so much for people. There's a loss there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they talk about, people experiencing grief now.
Mm-hmm.
So the last 3 years I was coming out of this. So first year is whatever, you can't count. Second year was like me trying to do some of the things that I was doing before again. And then the third year, last year, I actually took over as head coach for the U of M team. So that was like a big deal for me for skating. And I didn't realize this, and probably the whole time since my mom died, but I was in a pretty deep depression. And so things were foggy.
Right.
Things affected my memory. I could, focus on skating, but that was like pretty much it. And slowly, and but I'd still have all these callings, right? Of like, oh, like I really want to get my podcast going again. I had a coaching podcast that I was doing. Oh, like I hear people. So anyways, that year I was in a pretty deep depression. And when COVID happened, that actually lifted something. That actually like cracked something open for me. And sort of all of a sudden it was like more clear for me, and I was out of that depression. Because I don't know if that was just like this additional big loss in the world.
Yeah. What do you think it was about the situation? What perspective or what change, what tweak did the COVID-19 pandemic give you that allowed you to break out of that? What do you think?
Well, I kind of mentioned before, it was a very abrupt end for skating for me, where this has been a sport that I've been competitive in, for the last however many years of my life. It's never just ended like that.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I'm looking around, because competition, you're preparing so much for it. So you're like ready to do it. Right. And then it's like, no, it's gone. So I think that kind of, left me in a place of like, well, what do I do now?
Right.
And it was also like a relief, because I put so much pressure on those competitions. It was like, oh, I actually don't mind that I don't have to do this. And again, I wasn't skating. So, I mean, it was sad for my skaters who wanted to compete.
Yeah.
So there was kind of that. And then there was all this like fear and stuff going around on Instagram. And I felt this like deep, like, I need to rise up. I need to use all the skills that I've learned life coaching and like help people. So then I was trying to post positive things, and I was almost trying to, like, as much um, as much anxiety producing things I was reading, I was trying to like flip it and be so positive.
Sure.
And so it kind of put me in this really weird state where people were, you know, friends and family and other people were, you know, losing their jobs or um, in a place where it's so like it was very scary at first, right? Like people didn't know what this was. We had very little understanding about it, how it we were going to get it, where it
Right.
was. Um,
Just like how society was going to deal with it. It's just questions. When's a vaccine coming? How does it transmit? It's just like a lot of unknown stuff, and just
yeah,
how is this going to affect our everyday lives? And it just seems like everybody's routine got shattered. Everybody's routine got
yes.
completely thrown off
So
the rails.
yeah, so people were feeling that loss, and I was feeling a sense of like, oh, I need to help. Um, Even though it was also lost for me, I was starting to think, oh, you know what? Like I've been in training for this the last 3 years,
Hmm.
um, dealing with my own loss, and then I was also thinking about from the life coaching standpoint, like knowing that this was such an opportunity for people. Like this is going to provide so much change and innovation,
Hmm.
and you know the way we come together as a community is going to be different. So there was a bit of like excitement for me in that. Um, so basically, we'll get into like mental health here because when it ended up happening, I started to feel better, but I was seeing people around me feel worse. And I started to feel better. So I had only started antidepressant medication in December. And I didn't know much about it really. But since I was feeling better, I had decided that I didn't need it. I would go off of it.
Hmm.
And which you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to, you know, work with your doctor to wean it out of your system if,
Hmm.
you know, you're ready to do that.
Right.
So I
And
decided,
yeah,
yeah,
I
so
was sorry. I was gonna say, like, and full disclosure as well. Like I've been on antidepressants for some number of years now, or I've had experience with various different types of antidepressants. So yeah, when you say that, it's like you're not supposed to just stop taking it. There is a
no,
lot that's going on chemically with them, and you're supposed to kind of wean off them, and talk to your
yes.
doctor.
Yeah, so I didn't do any of that.
Mm.
I don't know why. I just thought I was just like, you know what? I'm feeling good. I don't need these anymore. Uh, and that combined with I was having a bit of trouble sleeping, having a bit of trouble turning off my mind because when I get excited, like it starts to build. So I had lots of ideas of things that I wanted to do. Um, I was really I really wanted to help my community and like friends and family and
Hmm.
help people feel better. But what ended up happening is that because of the going off the drugs, because of the stress and anxiety release, because of not sleeping, I ended up having what's called a manic episode. And I had never had this before in my life, but
Hmm.
basically, and sort of slowly over a week, sort of slipped into like my own delusion of reality, um, which became like was really like kid like, really playful.
Yeah, I mean, could you maybe walk us through that a little bit, like what that progression was like, or what you know?
Yeah, so mania and so just to skip to the end of this, I did end up going to the hospital and spending some time in the hospital and getting monitored and getting on a better prescription for me and all of that and getting the help I needed, which ended up a diagnosis of bipolar or what they call manic depressive.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
manic depressive was like, you could be on the depressed side of things, or
Yeah.
you could be on the manic, hyperactive side of things.
Right.
Um, or in between, but just like you can tend towards those
Yeah.
states.
Yeah.
So for me, being in that depression for so long, coming out of it, now all of a sudden I was in this manic.
Right.
And so at first it was just like hyperactive, like, excited thinking. Um, then it was like a lot of like things were making sense to me. A lot of, what was happening with COVID, I, had answers for in my mind. Um, and then at one point, it actually turned into like fantastical, like the world around me turned fantastical,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. So like one of those books where all of a sudden the regular world is sort of turned magical.
Right.
Because I remember, so lucky for me and thankfully, like I had my fiance was taking care of me, my sister was helping, my dad was helping, because they all started to recognize that like I wasn't acting normal. uh, but there was one time they came over and we put on, I had dug out this VHS tub of VHSs from family videos from like being younger, and we put that on and I was watching it, and it felt like it was some sort of technology virtual reality thing. Like I was watching this video of like me and my mom and my sister at Clear Lake at the stables, so with these horses, but it felt like I was immersed into it, and it felt like I could hear the wind, which you could on the video, but like it felt very real.
Right. Like
And
it
then I
kind of
had thought,
triggered like these deep-seated memories in your brain or something, and kind of just like,
transported me there, yeah. But I thought, because Kip was into technology and all that, like I thought maybe he was working on something, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing, like this technology, how is this happening?
this is
So
gonna change the world. You're gonna be rich.
yeah, so like for that, I just experienced that way different.
Hmm.
um and then same with like started watching different things on Netflix, and I found them so funny and so realistic, and I was like, oh, this is like about my life, like somehow, Netflix has been like monitoring me, maybe on my Fitbit or something, and it's like it it was like I imagined like 3D graphics, or when people wear those 3D suits, right? And then they
Okay.
get transposed into cartoon or whatever.
Oh, like a
So
motion capture thing or
yeah.
something.
So basically you kind of become, I guess that's paranoid. Like you think everything's about you kind of
Yeah,
thing.
sure.
So there was that.
Yeah.
Uh
That
yeah.
so I mean a lot of people that know me personally will know this, but if you're watching this and you don't know who I am, I did spend some time in the ICU in 2016, and I was for a period of time in an induced coma. And there was a state when I was coming out of the induced coma that I was in a hallucinatory, delusional state. And what you're describing a lot reminds me a lot of that period of time where it's taking any senses, any experiences that were happening around me, and my mind would completely just run with it.
Yeah.
It would just create a new reality,
Yeah.
and it almost didn't even matter where I was physically anymore. At some point, it would just take this idea, and it's as if you were daydreaming,
Yeah.
and the daydream completely consumed your experience. It sounds a lot like that to me. To me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's exactly it. It started to, yeah, basically hallucinate, or like just interact with my environment differently, or it seemed like my environment was acting with me differently.
Hmm.
um like even just little buzzes and things on my phone, I was like, oh, I know why it's doing that, like,
Right.
or like it's speaking to me, or I
We
don't know.
yeah. It's like your brain's trying to make sense of these, just
Yeah.
everything, and trying to connect it to. It's amazing how, um, you know, elastic our minds can be sometimes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just like
And
the right switch is flipped.
well, and it really gave me an appreciation for how um confusing and scary it can be as well. And like I said, like most of my mania was very like playful and fun and light and like exciting, exploring this new world of like, oh my gosh, I knew there was magic, but like now it's happening.
I knew
But
it.
yeah, but at one point it did turn scary for me, and it ended up that was the night I had to go to the hospital, and it was like it was really scary. And uh, I don't know how much I want to get into it, but I ended up running out of my house in the middle of the night barefoot in a robe in like April, mid-April, where it was still cold, like it was still snowing, and like onto my neighbor's steps. And I wouldn't, like, I was scared of my fiance and scared of my dad that was staying over there.
Mm,
I thought they were like kidnappers.
mm.
And so I had run out of my house. I was on my neighbor's steps, and basically like the police came trying to like get me to go with them, but I didn't trust anyone, especially men. And like how, and again, like what I was seeing and what I was hearing didn't line up.
Mm,
And so I felt like very unsafe.
sure.
And it wasn't until my sister came, and I was holding on to her hand, and she's like, okay, like you have to come now, like you have to come with me, we're going in the ambulance. And I was like, okay, I'm going to decide to trust you, but I don't trust anyone else here.
Hmm.
But I was standing there like refusing to go. And I was actually I don't know, I came up with this. I was just standing there like protecting myself with like my little
Was
fingers.
everybody a vampire? Is that what you was it?
I just thought they were like untrustworthy men, and it was some sort of weird thing where I was kidnapped and I didn't feel safe. And yeah, so it became very scary for me.
Yeah, I can.
Um, but if I was, so I was like peaceful with this, right? But
Right.
if I was aggressive or if I tried to fight them or whatever, right? Like something, I'm so lucky that, they didn't, because they were telling my sister, they're like, you know what, if she's not going, we're going to have to forcibly remove her
Right.
from this, right? And I think that's where it gets really scary of you know for people with mental health issues, which could be any of us, because this had never happened to me before. I had no idea, this was about like how easy it could be, for those situations to go really bad.
Yeah.
um yeah.
Yeah. I think that's very well. Thanks for sharing that experience. For one,
Yeah.
like I think, um,
it,
really glad you're open to talking about it. But I think it definitely can show just. I believe like every one of us uh, is capable of a lot more, or like I said earlier, every one of us, our minds are a lot more elastic than we think they are. It doesn't take that much for a trigger, just the right switch, just the right bits in your brain to be flipped, and reality in your own mind to be changed.
mhm.
And it can happen to anybody, or it has everybody has the capacity for our thought process or our experiences to lead to circumstances that cause stuff like that. Um,
Yeah, like, yeah, I don't know, I hadn't ever had anything like this. And then so that was the sort of worst point. And then I was taken in, and the ambulance looked like a spaceship. Like I still didn't trust it. When we finally got to, I think it was the Grace Hospital, we had to wait in the garage because of COVID
Right.
thing.
Yeah. So in
And
the
so,
middle of all this, COVID's still happening.
yeah, this was COVID getting started. And once we got to the garage, like, again, my brain trying to make sense of things, I was like, oh, like, we're going to, like, again, thinking about the spaceship, I'm like, we're going to space, aren't we? Like, okay, the planet's not good anymore. Uh,
Do you remember the
Elon
paramedics or
Musk,
anything? Like, do you remember thinking they were spacemen or something? Or like,
uh, no, they didn't look like spacemen, but they just looked like soldiers or army people,
oh,
like
okay.
in
Yeah.
their jackets and whatever. Like they looked very, it looked very serious when I
Mm.
got there. It's like, oh, okay. Um, yeah, it was very strange. And then we got put in like a waiting room, and I was there with my sister again. And so still like my hallucinating, all the people, for some reason I was thinking about Canada geese and gooses
As
and
as one
goose.
does when going through a manic
Yeah,
episode. Yeah.
there was something that there was a story, because all these, like, while this was happening, there were all these stories playing out in my mind and connecting. And so
Yeah.
there was this one about geese because I was hearing them through my window as we were sleeping.
Mm.
Um, but everyone in the hospital, like, had like geese qualities and were like like would walk by the room and sort of looked like a goose face, especially with their masks.
Oh,
Because
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't used to seeing people in masks yet, right? So
Right.
everyone's wearing, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's,
So
yeah.
basically, with this manic episode, it usually lasts about a week. So from there, then I'm slowly coming back into reality and letting go of some of those stories, but they all seemed very significant at the time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It, do you look at that experience or look at those stories, and do you see it as just like random hallucinations that happened in your mind, or can you trace that to maybe parts of your mind that was trying to work something out, like with the geese and stuff like that? Was that do you think was it just like truly like random hallucinations, or do you think it was like something in you that was trying to?
Yeah. I truly do believe in our subconscious mind, and us being holistic creatures. And you know people talk about your your inner wisdom as well. So I don't really believe that thoughts come up randomly for us. I think that they're coming up for a reason, in that specific moment too. So I do think that um, a lot of the stuff that I was connecting were different pieces of things that were in my subconscious that sometimes I was aware of and sometimes I wasn't. Um, so what else was coming up for me? There was a lot about like my, like, if you were to think of my life like a movie, like my love story, like throughout, from my first crush in grade 1 or 2 to all the boys that I had relationships with. And there were just these stories that were coming back to me and going like, oh, this is because of that and that's because of this.
Hmm.
And um I think that was coming up for a reason, because I was also engaged to be married in August, and like our social was canceled. And then while I was in the hospital, I realized like
Mhm.
the wedding needs to be canceled. Um, and then just having me look at my relationship overall and how it was matching that expectation that I had for what it's supposed to be. Um, and yeah, and there were things about it that weren't matching. So through all of this, and then coming out of the hospital, I had this sort of knowing, even though I didn't want to know it, that I was going to have to end this relationship. Um, and of course, the doctors are like, don't make any major changes in your life right now, which is probably good advice. But that sort of knowing was so strong.
Sure.
Like even though all this mania stuff, there was all this delusion to it.
Right.
It also, there was so much clarity to it. Like there was so much clarity, so much awareness, so much understanding. Because it is your own mind playing things out for you, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like a great loss from it.
Sure.
And so this summer I ended up moving back in with my dad, which, you know, I'm grateful for this time with him because, like I said, I lost my mom 3 years ago. So that's felt good. But yeah, this summer it's mostly been like me recovering. And then into the fall it's like now I'm feeling like good. I'm able to do things. And now I'm like, okay, how can I help people again through this life coaching and through what I've learned about myself and about my mind and all of that. I think so. With the diagnosis of bipolar, at first I was just pretty dismissive of that because I'm like, that's not me. Whatever ideas I had about it, I'm like, no, that's not me. But what I've experienced of it, and if I had to explain it, and I think if I'm explaining this right, but I've done some research on it, but not enough. And I haven't really talked to other people a lot about it. But what it feels like is that like I can experience feelings very deeply, and whatever feeling feeling is how I go about the world. So whatever a feeling I'm in, that's also like the resources and the thinking and the memory I have too. So I could be very depressed one day and not feel so real. And then very happy another day, and that feels so real. Like that's my truth. But I can't necessarily access the happy thinking when I'm depressed, if that makes sense.
Sure. Like it's the part of your brain that's you know, it's like just the state of the neurons in your brain right now. It's just like it's just those are the ones that are firing, the neural pathways that are telling you you're feeling depressed and you're in the certain thought processes that are going in circles and circles and circles. I can definitely relate to that side of things a lot as somebody who's been dealing with depression for a long time. It's just like when your brain is in those cycles, it's like I've described it a little bit sometimes as like a rhythm, as a musical beat that's just really catchy, but like not productive. But it's just really
like
catchy.
You keep falling into it,
and it's just in your mind, and it's just in your head, but you can't get rid of it because it's really catchy, and you just like everything you do and everything you think is layered on top of that beat. And it takes a lot for that beat to be changed to something happier, or changed to a different mindset. So I can definitely relate to that side of things.
Yeah, because it becomes a habit too, and
absolutely,
you know, we like things we know. So you know, if depression is what you know, it can be comfortable there.
Yeah. Do you think? How do you think this experience of having this manic episode? Do you think it would have been different in like any other year, or do you think or the climate of this year and
I think it was a cracking open. Like I think it was, you know, meant to happen with this year. And then my experience in the hospital, I was in there for maybe 2.5 weeks, and no visitors, no one can come to the floor. Anything that's being sent in needs to be able to be sprayed down or wiped down. And it was like the rules were changing every day because, again, this was April where we didn't really know
Yeah.
things. Um, and as a coach, like I have thoughts and feelings about like, oh, I can try to understand anyone.
Hmm.
And at first when I was in this psych ward, I thought the people were actors because some of them were being so extreme, and like, it takes nothing to set someone off, and then they're like yelling or like being aggressive or crying or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that was really eye-opening for me about mental health, and about like I met so many different people in there,
Mm.
which everyone had their own thing they were dealing with, but at the same time there was this like sameness in
Sure.
everyone, that I could kind of see. And yeah.
It's like it didn't matter why you were there or how you got there. You kind of were all there. Um,
Yeah. And again, everyone dealing with their own things, but then also being confronted by their own um, stuff with each other, right? Like
yeah.
there was a lady that thought I was a Satan worshiper
Oh,
for some reason.
are you?
No.
Okay.
uh,
Because that's, you portray, you give off that image.
yeah.
So I can understand.
Yeah. So yeah, she had a lot of like weird confrontational things with me, and I'm just like, oh, okay, nope, that's not actually accurate. Yeah, and then there was another lady there, um, that she was probably bullied growing up, and you could tell she was bullied in her mind.
Mm.
And me talking to her and being nice to her would set her off.
Mm.
And she's like, what are you trying to do to me? And like get all aggressive, right? And then I'm not used to, like, I'm a person that will avoid confrontation, so like that would trigger me, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it's very interesting, very Breakfast Club like in there.
Very Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
Uh, Man, I'm getting flashbacks now to Breakfast Club, and the guy, what was that guy's name? He would like talk about his dad beating him up and stuff. And
Right.
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. All of a sudden you're like, oh, there's a reason you're like this, right?
Yeah, right. Everybody, I think that is something we could learn a lot more about just each other as individuals, is that nobody makes decisions, personalities exist in a vacuum. Nobody, we have, everybody's got a super long backstory of how our thought processes and our viewpoints got to where they were.
Mm-hmm.
So just better understanding that is a huge part in just communicating and understanding where everybody's coming from. So I guess taking that a little bit back to all of your coaching and your wellness teachings. Yeah, how is this experience, both your personal uh, manic episode, how has that kind of taught you about how's that affected your style and how you approach, yeah, coaching other people, and like talking about what makes them tick, and is, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of lessons do you feel like you've gained from going through this experience, and especially in this world now, in this year?
Um, well, definitely, like in terms of mental health, like I learned so much being in the psych ward
Mm-hmm.
with people that were dealing with things. Um, but I could also see it, like I could see when they were more clear, and I could see like something trigger and then they go there. So I think that's a good, which happens to all of us, like, and especially with anxiety. And I think so many people are suffering from anxiety. And what that is, something happens that they deem as a scary event or stressful event. Like it could even just be in an email coming in. And then all of a sudden you're triggered and your thought process is going down. Like for me, I've always had a lot of anxiety around like my to-do lists and things. Like it was this like love-hate relationship. Like I need it to get things done, but it also makes me overwhelmed because I'll put too many things on it, or I'll deem these events as stressful or bigger than they are. So I think that's given me that awareness. Like at the end of the day, we're all humans, all of us. I know there's
except
been a
for the
lot
lizard people. They're out there. I don't.
Sure, and when we find lizard people, that we'll have to figure out their experience as well.
Right, they might have a different psychology than this one.
Yeah, we've all been raised differently in our own home. Ethnically, we might be different. Where in the world you live, you might be different. Values might be different. But at the end of the day, we each are having a human experience, and that's the same. So it doesn't necessarily matter what the trigger is for you, but being triggered is a human experience. Feeling depressed is an experience, and it's not, because I think we tend to compare ourselves and go like, well, I have it better than so and so, or at least it's not this. But it's depression. It doesn't matter how it's caused or what it's about. You're still having that experience of depression. Like that's the same. And I think that's where, working with people, you have to let go of, what the content might be, like, what someone might be upset about, and help them deal with being upset and how to move past that. So there's sort of, you can really take the content away, because that's sort of just one aspect of it, but it's underneath is like, how are we dealing with emotions?
The content is just the surface level stuff that's bubbled to the top.
Yeah.
It's not what's...
And anytime, like a lot of this COVID stuff has brought up feelings of us against them, even like the US election, us against them. And anytime it's us against them, we're not working together as a community. We're not recognizing that we're all just like humans, right? So I might be on one side of the election experiencing us against them. Someone else is on the other side experiencing us against them. It's the same thing. And until we realize that and just try to, come to the same understanding, okay, this is what I believe, this is what I believe, this is what you believe, that's okay. We're all allowed to believe our own things. But it's how do we work together and allow each other to believe our own things.
How do we do that? That seems like a question we're always going to be asking.
Well, and this is where it starts internally. And this is where, like, now is the best time to work on personal development and understanding what's going on for you, and healing what needs to be healed. And, being brave in ways you need to be brave, and like making steps in your life that would be significant to you. Like that's the work that everyone should be doing. And when we all do that, then all of a sudden we can understand each other a little bit more, or we're not getting as triggered by other people because we've done our own work.
Sure. I think that's definitely, that's a really good message. I think it's something we all need to hear and really think about right now. It's time has definitely given us a lot of opportunity to be more introspective within this world. Where can we find more of your work? Where's you mentioned a blog, you mentioned your podcast. Where can we find that?
Yeah, so turnyourselfup.com is my website. I'm most active on Instagram at that happiness coach. I also like my own meditation and self-care is usually like a mindfulness movement exercise.
Okay.
So I sometimes run these mindful movement classes. I'm planning to do one again in the new year. So yeah, I would say following at that happiness coach is probably the best place to find me on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Jessica, for coming today and having this conversation. Thanks so much for your sharing your experience. It means a lot to me that you're willing to open up about that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it'll hopefully mean a lot to our viewers too, and they'll get something out of that, and that we can all relate to. And
I think that's it. The more I've told about my experience, the more people come up and go, oh, we've dealt with this in my family.
mm-hmm.
The more, which it needs to be talked about, right?
For sure.
Like this happened, I had no reference. I had never
Right, like you hadn't talked to anybody else with that type of experience, or like it's not something we publicly have conversations about, and I think it's something we would all benefit from if we were just more open about it and talk about more.
Yeah, so thanks for letting me open up, and yeah, this was a good conversation to have.
For sure. Thanks.